I'm happy to be here today and hearing some of the presentations that preceded this. I'm in a way out of my league with you folks, but really amazed by the work that you all do. So again, Jilly Andrews with the Georgia Department of Natural Resources and the Coastal Management Program, and I'm located down here in Brunswick, Georgia on the South Atlantic coast. It's a nice day down here. First, a little bit about the Coastal Management Program. We are entrusted with managing our coastal and ocean resources and the multiple uses that they have. We have direct permitting authority over our salt marshes, our beaches and sand sharing system, shellfish, and then the tidal waters that extend from the coastal zone all the way out to 3 miles offshore. So we work collaboratively with our local governments, our researchers, and our coastal stakeholders, and we're working with them on best management practices to protect and conserve their coastal resources. So our Coastal Marine Planning Initiative, or GCAMP, kicked off in 2011. The goal of that was really to help us move along in our mission of the Coastal Management Program by facilitating the availability of data and coordinating state, local, and federal regulatory programs on activities that were happening in Georgia's coastal and ocean waters. The coastal program is the lead on the GCAMP initiative from a funding point of view, but this project was really developed by an idea that was brought to us by Georgia Tech back in 2007. Tony was part of that, who we'll hear from later, and then another colleague, Mary Hallisey, who is taking a position on another area, but they brought this idea of this map, how to, doing resource management using GIS and mapping to us. We liked it so much that we worked with our federal partners at NOAA. We developed a 5-year strategy that they funded for us on marine spatial planning. So in this project, Georgia Tech was responsible for the identification and the compilation of the GIS data that we had both in-house in Georgia as well as in federal agencies. And then the construction and creation of the data sharing platform. And the Strategic Energy Institute was involved because they had a wealth of experience in some of the more new activities happening in the offshore environment, that being alternative energy development. And so having them as part of this gave us the ability to sort of work through and develop GCAMP in a likely real world scenario. So we used offshore wind energy development as sort of the way to sort of test and view how GCAMP was developed. And as I mentioned, folks came to us in 2007. Let's see if my slides moved. There we go. And there was a report that came out. It was called Southern Winds, and it was a study that first alerted myself and other coastal managers to the potential for offshore wind energy development near Georgia. Not something we'd really thought about before, but that process following that report began to move very quickly. And before we knew it, there had been an application from a regional power company to install wind test towers offshore from our most populated island. And as resource managers and as a state, honestly, we didn't know the first place to start on how to manage an activity like this. So that's when GCAMP, the idea was born. And it was during that time that we were developing GCAMP and getting the funding that several other possibilities emerged as well. And we had, for example, requests from to conduct seismic surveys in our offshore environment and some other activities related to oil and gas development. And we were grappling with how to safely allow these activities to occur in our offshore area without bringing harm to the values that we appreciate the most. And also, as we heard in a previous presentation, the North Atlantic right whale is critically endangered, 400 individuals left in that population, and we're entrusted with managing them from the Georgia point of view. So how do these types of new activities in the ocean that we haven't evaluated before get through the process, and how do we balance the management of that? So following all that, then came the decades-long moratorium, the end of the decades-long moratorium on oil and gas exploration off of our coast. So what did that then mean for our local fishermen and the tourism industries and the resources that they depend on? So from 2015 on, throughout the development and the refinement of the GCAMP tool, we saw more and more interest in developing Georgia's offshore area. Things that we're still dealing with today, from fuel transfer facilities to large-scale penned aquaculture. And this whole time period was shortly after Superstorm Sandy in the Northeast. And so interest in understanding where the sand resources of the near continental shelf were located. And so would there be sand mining offshore of Georgia to deal with as well? So let me see. We had all this happening, but prior to this, we think we had a pretty good feel for coastal management. We knew what we were doing. We had traditional uses. We have shipping, a good size commercial. We have 2 ports here for shipping. We have good size commercial fishing industry. We have our recreational activities. We have things going on here that we've known how to deal with for many years. We've had policies and procedures and practices in place and relationships with the agencies as well. And so the traditional stuff we got, but these new activities, these new proposals that were at that time really coming fast and furious are big projects. And there was much more involved with them than just natural resources, a lot of economic development, and a lot of different things that would happen as a result of those activities. So from our point of view as resource managers, we knew that we needed to start to align our policies and our processes in order to be able to deal with this. So to that end, I say that GCAMP came along not a minute too soon. Being able to develop this tool at the same time that we were getting all of these questions, I think really resulted in the development of an excellent product. So one of the first things we had to do was start to develop GCAMP and the data. And one of the earliest lessons learned is that not all data is good data for management. It's a really big take home lesson. Once we mined everything that we knew that we had in terms of data layers and put that together, we realized that it really needed to be looked at for scale. Scale was so important because if you are looking to evaluate 2 activities in the offshore, it's very easy to have data that one guy termed it as a peanut butter smear, but you just spread the data. There are fish and there are critically endangered marine mammals all over the ocean. So you can just say that they're there. But when you're trying to evaluate for a development project, whether site A is a better location or a site B, you need to have some specificity in that data that might be related to the density or frequency or condition of that resource located there. So this is something that became really, really important to us. And to get a better idea of the scale that we needed the data at, we started to look at things as it related to outer continental shelf or OCS lease block areas. So those are fairly small areas. They're about 9 square mile blocks. And was there a way to bring the data down to where we could do analysis at that scale? I'll let Tony talk more about that, but that was what we understood as the first step in getting that data together, is it really needed to be relevant to us as the managers. The next part of the process, so GCAMP isn't just a data project, it was the data policy project, helping us to manage the offshore environment. The policy part proved really tricky. It was always a dream of mine to be able to see policies somehow laid out in a map. And in 2011, that concept hadn't been really fleshed out yet, but we did start to do it on paper. And so drafting a list, thinking of that offshore wind development project, drafting a list of the different state agencies and policies, regulations, and permits that would be involved with a project like that got complex very quickly. An offshore project just isn't the physical structure in the offshore environment. It's that physical structure and then any pipelines or cabling that bring it to the land, and then all of the activities that occur on the land to support that offshore. So all of those were in the back of our mind as we developed this list that you see here of some 15 state agencies alone, and even more policies. And then to confound this, we could have added federal on here, but we felt this was enough to chew on for one day. But The other thing that we noticed is that everyone was sort of looking at each other when we started to talk to agencies about offshore development, is who goes first? Who's the lead on an offshore project? And, you know, it took us 5 years to come up with an answer for that. There was a lot of great discussion. And this is where having the benefit of a group like the Strategic Energy Institute was so great, who could bring all these different agencies together, as well as people who were very knowledgeable about offshore wind, into the same room. We were looking at the GCAMP map and seeing what we had developed and having that visualization to say, okay, I've got a resource of concern out here in an area that you're interested in looking at for this type of energy. Now, what do we all need to do? And so that conversation did result in the identification of, if you will, a one-stop shop for Georgia that the agencies agreed to help the state facilitate things occurring in the offshore environment. So here we are 10 years later, just about, and what have we accomplished? GCAMP, the web portal, has been live for several years. It is a trusted resource of information for not only myself and the colleagues here at DNR, but for federal agencies as well. We do know that it has been utilized by the Army Corps of Engineers, BOEM, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. We had a recent case study, if you will, with the U.S. Coast Guard. It was a very critical tool to have in hand when a 650-foot cargo ship tipped over in our port, but more than a few miles from here, and having everybody be able to look at the information on the same page in different locations and view the information and the resources really sort of made GCAMP worthwhile just in that one moment. So I can't express the value of having everybody literally on the same page with these data viewers and portals. So, but we're not done. GCAMP may never be done. But going through the process, we revealed that we have some pretty large gaps in our data. And one of the biggest ones that we really needed to be able to, in our opinion, effectively balance the uses of the coastal resources was knowing what the humans' interests were outside of commercial shipping and commercial fishing. Where else are people using the ocean? And this is not something that's easy to get at. Fishermen don't like to say where they fish. They don't like to tell anybody, especially a manager. So we were able to partner with our local chapter of the Nature Conservancy, who took an interest in this, and they helped us build up that data set. And how they went about gathering that data is probably a whole session for you all. It was participatory mapping that, you know, had some good points and some bad points, but at the end of the day, they were able to give us a good snapshot of recreational uses here on the coast. And that is now part of the GCAMP umbrella. And so with the experience that we went through with GCAMP and how much we value it, we've really sort of come to love our portals here in Georgia. We have several others that have been developed. One is the Georgia Wetlands Restoration Access Portal, which is GCAMP's little sister, and our coastal hazards portal, which is a large amount of data put in to really specifically look at resiliency and risk to coastal hazards. So GCAMP was the springboard for a lot of this, and I can't tell you what a great tool it is in modernizing resource management. But to give you the more technical details, I'm going to go ahead and try and turn this over to Tony. Somebody may have to help me with that.
Thanks, Jill. That was good. Let me share my screen. Hi, everybody. Thanks, Dawn, for the great introduction. And it's a little bit intimidating, I think, following the great technical session that we saw. It's really amazing. It was inspiring, to be honest, and also quite amazing to see the utility of ArcGIS Pro. I haven't really dived in as deep as I should, and I think seeing what I saw a couple minutes ago really kind of pushes me forward. But I'm going to talk to you today about kind of the technical background of GCAMP, the Georgia Coastal Marine Planner. Like Jill said, it started almost 10 years ago to today, and you know, I think all of you know the landscape or the oceanscape, so to speak, of data and portals was significantly different then. I think it was just starting to kind of blossom in 2011. And, you know, to be honest, I think coastal and marine portals were a little bit ahead of land portals. And that was kind of my take on everything back then. We started the Coastal Marine Planner in 2011 by looking at really what was everybody else doing around the nation. We didn't want to kind of just jump in and reinvent the wheel. So we looked at regional portals like NROC, Marco, we looked at NOAA Digital Coast, Marine Cadastre. And at that point, everybody was kind of doing their own thing as far as data formats and delivery mechanisms. You know, most of it, I think, was, it wasn't out of the box. It was all customized web applications. And so that was a little intimidating, I think, because you had to be a programmer really to make everything useful. It felt like that in 2011. And web services were just kind of becoming prevalent, I think, and there was a lot of connectivity issues. What happens if you're connecting to web services all over the place and one of them breaks, and what happens to your map and so on. So we were kind of trying to figure all that out. We spent the first couple of years looking at data is essentially it. And we looked at data in human use categories, environmental categories, and physical categories, and kind of just tried to compile really as much as we can at first. And then we identified data gaps in the state, and then we went forward with building our actual portal, which
Hey, Tony, do you have slides?
Live. I think it's been live now for probably 5 or 6 years. This slide I show you because, you know, when you're building a portal, I think as a GIS person, the default tends to be let's just get all the data we can, and let's just put it in here and let people figure it out. And like Jill said, that we tried to shy away from that. So we spent a lot of time looking at who had authoritative data at the state level, at the federal level, at the local level, who had it, what did we really want to show people on this portal, what were we trying to use it for, and what scale did we need it at. But
Tony, very sorry to interrupt.
Quite a bit of time, I think, to put all this together. We had to worry really about formats and who was going to host the data, and what was our hardware, what was our software, and so on. And when we started this, you know, I'm from Georgia Tech, and like most tech people, we wanted to reinvent the wheel almost, I think. So we started building an application, you know, coding in JavaScript, trying to create our own widgets and so on. And I think at that point, I'm not, maybe Dawn can correct me, but I think at that point, Esri's ArcGIS Online had been there for a few years, and you know, I'm a long time Esri user in class and in profession, and you know, when something new comes out, I don't jump right into it. I kind of wait to see what happens. But you know, when we started in 2011, by 2013, I noticed, I think that ArcGIS Online was really prevalent. It was starting to be kind of the standard across federal government agencies, local governments, and state governments. And so we kind of migrated towards Esri. And I think it was one of those times in a project where you're like, is this the right decision? Do I want to do this? And I'm so thankful that we did, because, you know, as when we're doing something like this, I'm creating a product for a state agency, and I have to think, how are they going to use it when I'm gone? And I think if we built something that was really too customized, it would never have worked.
Hey, Tony, can you show your slides?
Oh my God, you don't see them?
No, this is mine, Tony.
This is yours. What do you mean? Hold on.
But Jill had put up her slides, Tony, but okay. But can you share your screen from where you are?
And my sound was off. Can you see my screen now? Let's see.
Oh, great. There you go.
Yeah, I guess people from Georgia can't run Zoom shows. That's what you're learning today, right? Sorry. Okay.
There we go.
All right, I'm back on application. So I'm talking about data. I'm talking about how we got to this point. And we migrated to ArcGIS Online, and it was really a great thing for us to do. And so what we did is we had all this data and we broke it into several use maps. As you can see here, energy, fisheries, habitat, shipping, and newly added recreational uses by the Nature Conservancy. We have a series of story maps on there as well, because one of the things that we wanted to do in this project was not simply, well, we wanted to kind of touch all our possible audiences. Managers who might not be very technical, and so we created story maps to help walk them through how to use our data, and then customized maps for kind of the more technical users. So we were trying to bridge the gap, I think, and hit all our bases, so to speak. So we have a series of story maps. And we also have an AIS animation. I was happy to see in ArcGIS Pro the ability to do this, because we did this in 2012, and we did an animation of 4 years of daily ship traffic for the coast of Georgia, and it was quite an undertaking computationally to get that all done. So you can go to GCAMP and watch that. It's actually got beautiful music created by myself as the background. But I'm going to talk a little bit about our applications, and then I'll get into one of our case study story maps that Jill briefly mentioned about wind energy. But our applications are all built using Esri App Builder, and most of them have pretty standard map functions in there. It's pretty basic, but we do have some custom queries and charts. We have some time animation for fisheries survey data collected by the state, and we have a reporting tool. And when we first started this, that was one of the big things we wanted to try to attempt to do, was kind of a summary tool, draw a box in the ocean and get a report back to tell us what's happening at that area in the ocean. Because I think as a planner, which is my background, we want to get all the information we can about a certain area as we're making decisions. And that was quite complicated, to be honest. When we first started doing the reporting tool, we're trying to do it live. So we'd go out and hit web services, rasters and vector, and try to return information from those. And the timing was all off. It just really never worked. And we didn't have a bottomless pit of funding for this project. So we kind of had to move to a different way of doing that. And I'm happy to see, as we were doing this, we worked a lot with NOAA, and we talked back and forth about their summary tool. And I think our discussions, helped them finalize and formalize their ocean reporting tool, which is really quite amazing. But they were running into the same issues we were as we were developing this. So here are some of our tools. We have one custom tool. It's a OCS block wind suitability tool. So think of it as a custom query for offshore leasing blocks, where we've set certain parameters that you can go in and you can choose the mean bathymetry, see if there's sunken vessels in the leasing block, or there are artificial reefs. Is there marine habitat there? Is it a disposal area? What's the wind speed at that block, and so on. Return a report for you, or return the query results and tell you what hit your selection. We have basic charts and so on. And here's a kind of a picture of our summary tool. Here we created this widget on our own. It uses the drawing tool and the reporting tool. And essentially you draw a box offshore. And what we did was we aggregated all the data we thought necessary to make decisions to our aliquots. And so it's canned, essentially. We have an aliquot layer, and we're simply doing a query and returning a report on the selected aliquots here. And so it's very fast, obviously, because it's all canned. But you can see here what's returned. If it's a raster, it returns statistics. And if it's a vector, it usually returns a yes or no. If something's there, for example, sunken vessels, no, it's in a navigable waterway, and so on. So I think this tool, we're actually going to take this to GRAP, the Wetlands Restoration Access Portal, and do something very similar on land again, because these kind of tools really help you make decisions. I think it's a quick way to get good information. quickly. All right, our story maps, I think, are also one of our strong points on the GCAMP portal. We have multiple story maps. As a teacher in GIS, I loved teaching my students about story maps because I think they're such a great way to convey complicated information in an easy to understand format, as long as you're good at doing that. And Sasha, I think, said it yesterday, talked about having an artist help them develop these things. And we were fortunate enough, I was very fortunate to have some students who were very good with multimedia and art. I had one student who was a tremendous artist, and she just dropped out of graduate school to become an artist, and she's doing quite well, actually. But we have an overview story map, which is kind of like this presentation here that just walks you through what GCAMP is all about. We have a series of tutorials, story maps that are really a bunch of videos that you know, it's almost like if your grandmother wanted to go on to GCAMP, you could point her towards the story map tutorial, and she could see how to use the query tool, to use everything. We kind of assume that people don't really know how to use these interactive maps. And then I think our most prominent story map is this hypothetical wind farm story map that I'm gonna go through right now. It's a case study that we did. We made up a fictional island called Gemkitix, and I believe that I was thinking about this the other day. I think that is an acronym for all the people that worked on the project, their first initials, I believe. And then I was like, do we have that many people work on the project? It's just so long ago, but I think that's what we did. And it's a story map that's a hypothetical wind farm case study, essentially. And the idea was that we would show a user, if they're interested in developing offshore, these are the steps that they would need to take to make that happen. You know, it's not the end all. You're not going to be able to say, yeah, I found the perfect spot to do my sand borrowed company or a wind farm, but it's the first step in that. I think it allows them to gather information in one spot that would be otherwise kind of difficult to do. And really the most important thing of this is what Jill talked about. It really tells you what state agency becomes involved in your development project. So I'll go through a couple of the slides here. I think there's 6 or 7 slides in the show. Maybe the first one is kind of understanding the policy process on developing offshore, and it follows a hypothetical utility company called Susico and what they need to do if they're trying to develop an offshore wind farm. And we have links, as you can see, to fact sheets, like, for example, the Bohm Wind commercial leasing process fact sheet. We have renewable energy information links and so on. So we not only do we have links to the live GCAMP map, we have links to outside, and then we have a lot of links to videos as well. So the second slide is planning and project initiation. So, you know, this company has expressed interest in developing a 120 megawatt wind farm off the coast of Georgia, and using the tool that we created in GCAMP. This video here shows you the tool. They found a leasing block right there that met their requirement for establishing a wind farm, certain wind speed, certain distance from shore, certain depth to bottom, and so on. So they go through that first slide. We show them how to use GCAMP to kind of target their area. Then the next slide says, well, you found your area. What are the uses that you need to balance for your development? And here we have more videos, as you can see. We have a video that talks about if you have a leasing block that you're going after, and for example, it's a wind farm, you're going to have to take a cable to the shore and go through federal, state waters and local waters, and just kind of advising you that that triggers a bunch of regulations. So we then kind of walk them through the uses that they need to keep in mind as they're doing their development. The first one being biological and ecological uses. Then we have some physical environment uses, and most of these are videos. If you click on one of the pictures, they take you to a video about that use, whether it's biological, physical, or human use. And so here we have videos of artificial reefs, subway cars being thrown into the ocean for artificial reefs. And then we have links to human activities as well, a nice shrimping video, and here's a link to the AIS video that we created for this project. So again, the slideshow just kind of walks them through, you set up your site, what do you need to think about when you're doing your site, and then it gets to kind of the meat of it. It says, well, you've identified your site, what are the agencies that you need to be in touch with to do your site. So we have this video here that's actually, it's quite comical, really. It's got soothing ocean sounds in the background, but as it starts with this first Georgia Coastal Resource bubble here, and then all the other bubbles pop up, and it just shows you the complexity of what happens when you're trying to develop offshore, what agencies are involved, what acts are involved, and so on. So again, we walk kind of through the process for the developer, and since the developer starts planning, they use the GCAMP tool to identify an area, and at the same time, they are BOEM is starting a planning and analysis phase, keeping in mind this is all about wind for this hypothetical one, and we just kind of walk them through what they need to think about. And we're not I don't want to say naive enough to think that the developer doesn't know a lot of this, but some of them, this is just trying to cover the state spaces, and, the developer's not going to know everything. So we've tried to lay out this path. And like Jill said, I think before we started doing this, it was unclear on who was responsible for what. And so DNR stepped up, the Coastal Resource Division, and kind of took lead on this, because inevitably, if they didn't, somebody else would have, and it might not have gone the way that they wanted to. So I think that's almost it. We kind of end with this document that we created. It's a request for early coordination. It's a 5-page checklist essentially that says, where's your project, what did you find on GCAMP, what data layers are there, who's involved, and so on. And the developer could fill this out and submit it to DNR, and that's it. So we just kind of end thanking them, and really that's kind of it for GCAMP. We have these story maps, web apps that are really designed to help facilitate planning off the coast of Georgia. So thanks a lot. We appreciate having us here. And sorry for the technical difficulties.
That's all right. Thank you so much to both you and Tony and Jill. Really love the practical, use-inspired nature of your presentation. And we have a few minutes for questions. So as the questions come in from the audience, I have always been fascinated with the work that you've been doing. So my question is about how you are able to coordinate between a university, a state agency, federal agencies such as BOEM and NOAA. Do you have any good best practices in terms of how you coordinate among those different entities, particularly for other states who might want to do their version of GCAMP?
Well, I don't know, Jill, if you want to take this, but I think Mary, who's not here, who's part of our group before, who now works at NREL, she was instrumental. And really, it takes somebody with perseverance to not give up, and really to be this conduit between the state agencies and the federal agencies. It's connections, and it is simply, it might sound cliche, but it's really not giving up when you hear the wrong thing, or you hear somebody tries to block you from trying to do what you're doing. You keep going. I know that sounds silly, but I think that's it. And Mary, it takes a certain type of person to be able to navigate different personalities, right? Different levels of skill, especially as it comes to geospatial. You need somebody who's really well-balanced, thick-skinned, nice to be around. and all of that. I don't know if that hits Mary, right, Jill? Maybe. Yeah. So.
Well, Jill, a question has just come in from the audience directly to you in terms of how would you, as a state agency official, recommend engaging with various partners as well from the state's perspective?
Lesson 101, Coastal Management 101 is it's all about relationships, and everything that we do here at the state agency level, we do it with cooperation. And so we don't do the research here in this office, but we try to link the research to the actual on the ground activity. So we're more of a translator or facilitator just from day one. But yeah, just to reiterate what Tony said, and I think too, I mentioned it in my presentation, is that Tony and Mary first came to our office somewhere in the neighborhood of 2007 or 2008. And GCAMP went live somewhere around 2016. So that perseverance and acknowledgement that it's going to take a lot of effort to work together and maintain those relationships. We brought in new people to the project all the time. It's like Groundhog's Day. You start with somebody, you get them on board, they move on, you bring somebody else on, you bring them back up to speed, and so forth. So that's what management's all about, is just good conversations and relationship and giving and tugging and pulling. Not everybody got their way on this project either.
I think those are excellent words of wisdom. And I really liked what you said, Tony, earlier about it was really the coastal and ocean community that was sort of out in front in terms of these types of efforts and these portals. And, around 2011, there was the International Coastal Atlas Network that was trying to do similar work as well, and continues to do so under the umbrella of the UN. So Jill and Tony, we really thank you for this excellent example. And for those of you in the audience, be sure to go to geospatial.gatech.edu/GCAMP to experience GCAMP for yourself. And please stay in touch with Tony and Jill as we will, and we will follow the developments of this portal with great interest, because these portals are needed now more than ever. So thank you so much, Tony and Jill. We appreciate you connecting with us all the way from Georgia. And stay safe and be well.
Thanks.